I would like to thank you for participating in this presentation and this opportunity to share our insights provided by the International Conference of Academic Integrity. Our presentation is called A Chilean Perspective on Academic Integrity During COVID-19, Analyzing Possible Benefits and Challenges of Online Learning Communities. My name is Beatriz Moya, and I am a PhD student from the Werklund School of Education at the University of Calgary, and I will be co-presenting with Dr. Elaine Eaton, who is an associate professor from the Werklund School of Education of the University of Calgary.
Sarah Eaton here, and I'm pleased to be joining you today from the city currently known as Calgary, which is the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region of the province of Alberta and Southern Alberta that includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, comprising the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. I further acknowledge that the city of Calgary that I call home is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3.
I would also like to acknowledge the traditional lands of the Mapuche in the Araucanía region, because this is where my home is located. From this place, I am inspired to invite all of us to think and find ways to show appreciation for our heritage. During this session, we will guide you to achieve three main outcomes. First, you will be able to explain how academic integrity has been addressed in Chile during COVID-19. Second, you will understand what possibilities exist to use informal learning and online learning communities to promote academic integrity. And finally, we will discuss possible barriers to academic integrity in Chile. As we begin this journey, we recognize the need to position ourselves in relation to our work. Therefore, I share with you that I am Chilean, who is currently a PhD student at the Werklund School of Education at the University of Calgary. Before I started my journey as a graduate student, I was an educational developer for 10 years. I was involved in projects to promote equity and diversity in the Universidad Católica de Temuco, situated in the Araucanía region. Now, I invite Dr. Elaine Eaton to share with us her positionality.
Thank you so much, Beatriz. It's my privilege to serve as your supervisor along your doctoral journey. Thank you for your introduction earlier. My positionality, of course, is that I'm Canadian born to a British mother and Canadian father, settler parents, and have always called Canada my home for the most part of my life. My academic journey landed me in education, where I currently study leadership, policy, and governance with a research program in higher education, academic integrity ethics, and academic integrity and ethics. And I also serve as the educational leader in residence for academic integrity at the University of Calgary. But prior to joining the education faculty, my background was in humanities, specifically second languages. And I conducted my master's degree in Hispanic literature, specializing in Chilean literature. So it's a privilege for me to be able to work with a student from Chile who's pursuing her doctoral studies. And finally, I'll declare my role as the editor-in-chief of the International Journal for Educational Integrity. And I'm grateful to colleagues around the world for supporting that work through work on the editorial board, for example.
To provide a background to this presentation, we will offer an overview of Chile and its higher education system. Chile is a country located in South America. It has 19,678,363 inhabitants. Currently, there are 46 accredited universities, including private ones and the ones that belong to the Council of Rectors of Chilean universities. The total enrollment of university students in the year 2020 was 654,909. I invite you to place ourselves in the context of Chilean higher education when the pandemic began. As it happened worldwide, universities rapidly realized we were facing one of the most complex global health crises, where social distancing was a critical strategy to contain the spread of COVID-19. In Chile, its government started implementing the plan called Step by Step. Therefore, by the end of March 2020, Chilean university campuses were closed. Therefore, the next challenge was support the swift transition into emergency remote teaching, which, according to Hodge and colleagues, is a temporary shift to instructional delivery to an alternate delivery mode due to crisis circumstances. The year before the pandemic started, e-learning covered 5% of first students program offerings. In this situation, the transition to emergency remote teaching implied a high learning curve for most faculty, especially regarding the use of new technology and the necessary teaching adaptations required to sustain this process. Therefore, university authorities, faculty, centers for teaching and learning, and IT unit staff and teaching assistants work together to adjust the courses that were previously taught face-to-face. It is also important to mention that the internet accessibility problems for the Chilean students complicated this transition during the first months of the year 2020. A related problem originated from the combination of work and home responsibilities for faculty teaching from home. As universities were adapting to this new scenario, emerging voices spread through university websites and the media, sharing their concerns about academic integrity in universities during the pandemic. For these higher education leaders, the perception was that the number of academic misconduct cases was increasing. So here, universities responded to this issue by promoting academic integrity views founded on an educational approach and offering educational development about academic integrity and resources aimed for faculty and students with information and best practices to foster and sustain academic integrity in university courses. Academic integrity concerns for universities stakeholders were approached in some universities with senior leaders and faculty actively promoting an educational approach, which incentivized concrete actions to promote an academic integrity culture throughout the institutions. These leaders sought to include the values of academic integrity in the university courses and as a critical element of students' development and education. Chilean universities, such as Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, Universidad de Chile, and Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, shared a clear vision of their expectations concerning academic integrity. They intended to develop a culture that could support it. Besides, in the year 2020, the University of Chile created an academic integrity commission in its School of Medicine, which evinced the evolution of mechanisms to approach academic integrity violations. Also, many Chilean universities offered workshops for faculty intended to expand their understanding about academic integrity, as Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, Universidad de Chile, and Universidad Católica de la Santísima Concepción. Besides, there were also workshops offered to use IT resources related to academic integrity, for instance, in the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso. Concerning resources for faculty and students with definitions and best practices for academic integrity, most resources address assessment-related issues. Here, we could highlight materials online created by the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, Universidad San Sebastián, and Equalis. Equalis is an important association that promotes reflection for the improvement of the Chilean higher education system. To finish explaining how academic integrity has been addressed in Chile during COVID-19 times, we would like to share some reflections. First, Using resources published online by Chilean universities, we could identify that 6 universities have published academic integrity policies over the last 7 years. These universities are Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, Universidad Andrés Bello, Universidad de Chile, Universidad de las Américas, Universidad de Viña del Mar, and Universidad Finisterre. Therefore, from a global perspective, this reality reveals that academic integrity is still an emerging issue in Chilean higher education. Besides, considering universities' information about academic integrity violations and how these are approached, for instance, plagiarism, we could recognize they were present in different kinds of university regulations. Sometimes they were embedded in students' regulations, some others in undergraduate programs regulations. The approach was diverse. However, what was consistent in the way universities approach this is that academic misconduct procedures are generally addressed at a program level and by community and program directors. However, when these cases are severe, they are analyzed in upper level school committees. Besides, most Chilean universities do not have established academic integrity units that could support these processes. The last reflection is that workshop offerings on academic integrity, especially present during COVID-19 times, evince that faculty are becoming interested in learning more about approaching these issues from an educational perspective. However, long-term offerings or established spaces to develop academic integrity, Chilean understandings specific to our culture are not publicly available in most accredited universities. There are some exceptions, such as Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, where strong institutional support exists.
It has been useful for Beatriz and I to conduct our reflective conversations together. And Beatriz has also been engaged with me and others in the Canadian context with regards to developing online communities of learning and practice regarding academic integrity during the pandemic. As I listen to Beatriz reflect on the progression and development of academic integrity in Chile, it reminds me in some ways of the journey that Canada has been on for the last several years. When I conducted a literature review in 2018 with a different graduate student at the time, Rachel Ladino and I, we looked at how to strengthen the research agenda regarding academic integrity in Canada. We started with a review of the literature and concluded with a call to action. Part of that call to action included more collaboration across institutions for advocacy and research. That then led to a national level policy analysis to examine academic integrity policies at colleges and universities across Canada with a specific focus on contract cheating, because that was a particular gap in the research in Canadian higher education. We've now completed several phases of the contract cheating policy analysis, with the most recent article on it having been published in December of 2020, examining the policies of Western Canadian universities. So in Canada, we're starting to cross our geographical borders through collaboration, and that has been largely facilitated through online tools such as Zoom to conduct real-time meetings. And during the Academic Integrity Symposium of 2019, our colleagues from Ontario offered a workshop on how to develop a regional network for academic integrity. As a result, 3 additional networks in Canada emerged after that time, one in the westernmost province of British Columbia, a couple of provinces to the east here with the Manitoba Academic Integrity Network and the Academic Integrity Council of Alberta. These province-wide networks have allowed for collaboration of colleagues across colleges and universities in ways that were previously unknown. During the pandemic, I started an online community called Integrity Hour, and it started with people from my own university and then people from my province, and then we began welcoming colleagues from across Canada. We meet every Monday morning from 10 to 11 and local time, and people adjust that to their local time zones. We gather to discuss ideas that are brought forward by the participants with regards to academic integrity with a focus during the pandemic. We've averaged between 12 and 15 people joining us every week from across provinces to basically crowdsource information and learn from one another in ways that we did not do previously before the pandemic. This has led to a strengthening of our communities that has transcended our provincial boundaries.
also exploring alternatives for Chilean academic integrity. At this point of the presentation, some considerations begin to intersect and inform each other. First, COVID-19 created a scenario with new needs regarding academic integrity. As in other corners of the world, academic violations were increasing, and universities became interested in finding best practices to address these problems. Second, we could see higher education leaders showing a growing interest in an educational approach to promote higher education academic integrity. For instance, the president of the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile believes that the resolution of academic integrity violations require clear protocols based and sustained in support from academic units and guided by an educational and not only punitive processes. Third, the Integrity Hour experience in Canada opens new possibilities to promote academic integrity in an informal, participant-driven, through an online learning community that includes participants from different institutions. Therefore, we wonder, how could online learning communities serve as a strategy to promote academic integrity understandings in Chilean higher education institutions? As we begin to explore this possibility, we understand online learning communities building from Segarra Sanchez and colleagues who conceptualize them as a meaningful space for virtual knowledge sharing that addresses participants' knowledge needs by facilitating peer-to-peer learning. One of its main characteristics is that it offers a safe forum because it constitutes a constructive environment. Here, participants can learn from misinterpretations and solve problems. The focus is on building relationships.
And I can add that during the time that we've been running Integrity Hours since March of 2020, Beatriz has joined us since she became a graduate student at the University of Calgary. So she's joining us from that perspective, but also from her home in Chile. So she's been an active participant in the Canadian Integrity Hour experience because she's a Canadian graduate student in one of our universities. So we've talked a lot about how Integrity Hour might potentially work in a different environment, what might be the benefits and some of the drawbacks. So when we consider some of the benefits of an online learning community such as Integrity Hour, we look at the possibilities for participants to connect with one another in online, well, we're doing this in online environments. We use Zoom for Integrity Hour and to connect people across communities that would not otherwise be possible. And we have strengthened our relationships with one another in our Canadian academic integrity community through Integrity Hour. And that people come, they present their topics for what they want to talk about. It's a participant-driven conversation, and it allows us to use formal and informal learning. We share resources, we share research articles, we share student resources, all kinds of things every week. We take notes and we work hard to create a sense of community. And this has been one of the primary benefits, in my opinion, of Integrity Hour. And we can also talk as well about some of the drawbacks and possible challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go on to the next slide. Yeah, and we'll have a look at some of the potential challenges for working in an online community of practice or an online learning community, and that some members might not be familiar with the tools and the platforms. That may have been true at the beginning of the pandemic when we were meeting in Zoom. And as people began to become more familiar with the Zoom platform, for example, the comfort level increased. And we knew that we were experiencing high levels of technology literacy when the technology itself disappeared into the background and we could focus on the conversation. We also understand that developing rapport with people whom you may have never met in person can be more complex than meeting people in face-to-face environments. So we made deliberate decisions, for example, about Integrity Hour, such as restricting it to employees of colleges and universities and educational institutions at this time. We don't have people who are, say, independent consultants or people who work for corporate entities. This is a community for educators, by educators. We recognize that some people may not have the same internet access as others, and that this is a barrier that we cannot control, and it can sometimes prevent people from joining our sessions. And we continue to grow and learn how to advance our community and advance our learning. And in fact, Integrity Hour has evolved since we first began. And now, for example, we use a circle process for our conversations in which each person has a chance to speak to a particular topic or pass if they choose, rather than having it as an open mic forum. The circle process for us was something that we learned and developed due to challenges that came up earlier in the sessions when we had an open mic format. So it hasn't been a perfect collaboration, but it has offered us opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
So, a Chilean academic integrity online learning community, let's talk about the possibilities. The possibilities we are considering for academic integrity online learning communities in Chilean context emerge from previous works that inform and have the potential to sustain this idea. First, there are successful international experiences that provide theoretical and empirical foundations to consider. First, the Integrity Hour community in Canada, which is active and almost reaching its first year, with a high number of participants every week. Besides, there are other cases in higher education. For instance, Segarra Sanchez and colleagues' experience with online learning communities and their effects on relational capital and their contributions to prevent counter-knowledge. Another successful experience is one shared by Lau in her dissertation about faculty online learning communities to support the pedagogical growth of physics faculty. Moreover, there are different online learning community models available for exploration to build the cognitive and social presence among participants in these online learning environments. For instance, we find the fully online learning communities model developed by Van Osvin and colleagues and the community of inquiry by Garrison. Both offer literature expanding on their conceptual dimensions and limitations. A last possibility emerged from the current adaptation processes that Chilean universities are experiencing during the pandemic. University presidents consider that technology use has been catalyzed in an unprecedented way. Voices from the academia emphasize the new possibilities triggered by deep technology use incentivized by COVID-19 and their likely effects on the teaching and learning processes. Leaders in higher education anticipate a more intended use of blended learning teaching and stronger interinstitutional collaborations. Chilean universities together have been critical, identifying solutions for the pandemic and connecting to Chilean society in the Chilean constituent process. There is potential for weaving those connections using technology. Now, in the sides of potential barriers and challenges, we find the presence of, well, digital barriers in Chilean higher education. They are mostly related to accessibility and use of technology. Correa, for instance, explains that Chileans are unequally connected. A large amount of the population uses internet connections through their mobile phones. In her view, most users are only familiar with social networks. In the last year, there has been significant progress in tackling the connectivity problems for students. However, there might be some areas that are still a struggle in our country in this matter. Besides, Zurita explained that this transition into remote teaching has put extreme pressure on faculty, since most of them were familiar with face-to-face teaching methods. Therefore, for some, the use of technological resources might still be problematic, even frustrating and confusing. Zurita's concerns invite us to think about new digital pedagogies that could sustain online learning communities regarding academic integrity in the Chilean context. Therefore, inspired by Bayon and colleagues' ideas, we consider the need to integrate new models that can sustain an effort for democratized learning that focuses on three main aspects. First, we seek models that de-emphasize power structures, build stronger communities, and pursue meaningful and socially useful knowledge. The last challenge we can identify at this moment is that the integrity, the terminology for academic integrity in Spanish is still emerging. This aspect also presents itself as an opportunity for potential online learning communities. It invites the creation of new understandings that are informed by international literature and situated in Chilean higher education teaching and learning practice. In conclusion, we can share that there is a growing interest in academic integrity in Chilean higher education, and emergency remote teaching emphasized this need. Therefore, it is essential to keep momentum. Besides, current academic integrity understandings in Chilean universities could grow and expand by supporting and scaling new academic integrity initiatives. University leaders have already started promoting an educational approach to academic integrity. There are also educational development offerings and resources. There is a foundation and a need to continue building from this platform. Online learning communities represent a feasible alternative for educational development in academic integrity, even during emergency times. Most importantly, they are a potential path for Chilean academic integrity's understandings for growth and can become a safe space for democratized learning that promotes interinstitutional collaborations and technology use. We would like to close this presentation by sharing our appreciation for your attention. If you have any questions, here you can find our contact information. Thank you for your time today with us.